Hello, good morning, lovely people. I'm going to be talking today about how our experience in life is created from within us. So, what do I mean by that? So, it can look very real and seductive, that it's outside experiences, outside events, other people, things that happen to us, things that occur in our life that are making us feel the way we do and are creating our experience of things. So, for example, if I'm driving my car and somebody cuts in front of me and I have an angry or peed off reaction to that, it can look as though that person pulling out in front of me is an event that's happening and has created the experience of anger or irritation or frustration within me. But actually, how the experience is being created is not from the outside in, but from the inside out. So I'm going to illustrate this with a few examples, but really the essence of it is that our perception of things that happen in our lives, our perception of other people, our perception of the experiences that we have, and another word for perception could be our thought in the moment or our thinking in the moment, the energy that passes through us, gives us a thought, brings a feeling, and then creates an experience. That's the thing that's actually creating our experience of the outside world and of our whole lives. So I'll give you an example of how the same event can be happening, but two people can have very different experiences of it. So my son is not a fan of climbing frames, climbing on walls, climbing up high. And he has a little friend who we used to go, before he was at school, we used to go to the park together all of the time. And when she saw a climbing frame, she would immediately run up to it, immediately start climbing, not giving a second look back to her mum to see where she was. She was feeling confident. She wanted to climb that climbing frame. And my son would always approach it with some trepidation. He'd want me to be right behind him. He'd say, "Mummy, I can't do it. It's too high. I don't want to do it." Or he would do it, but only if I was standing right behind him with my hands underneath him, trying to help him to get up. So what we can see from that is that the climbing frame isn't able to create an experience for us, because otherwise that exact same climbing frame would create the same experience in both children, and it doesn't. So our little friend's experience of that climbing frame was fun, it was exciting, it was something that she wanted to do, because the thought or her perception in the moment of that was probably something along those lines. This is really fun, I can't wait to get up high, I'm really looking forward to climbing. And these may not be conscious thoughts that are running through her, but that's the perception that she has of the climbing frame. Whereas for my son Elijah, his perception of the climbing frame is that it's something dangerous, it's something fearful, he might fall. He's looking at all of the sort of negatives of it, if you like, and feeling anxious and worried about what the possible outcomes of climbing on the climbing frame might be. So if the climbing frame were able, I'll say it again just to be clear, if the climbing frame were able to create an experience for us, then that one climbing frame would create the same experience in both children. And I saw very clearly with my own eyes, as I'm sure that if you've got children, you've also seen this, that isn't possible, and it doesn't actually create the same experience for both children. So that's a good indicator to me that the experience is working from inside, from within us, as opposed to from coming from the outside world. So there's also another way to look at it, that we as human beings can have a different experience of exactly the same thing. So I'll give you an example from my own life, which other ladies in the audience, and maybe men, will also have be familiar with this experience. So my husband and my son delight in leaving the toilet seat up. And I, as a lady, as a woman, like the toilet seat to be down. So sometimes my husband will leave the toilet seat up, and if my mood is quite high, so if I haven't got a lot on my mind, I'm feeling quite calm, I'm feeling quite peaceful. So in the snow globe example from previous videos, if my mind is quite clear and I'm feeling quite good in myself, I will not react to the toilet seat being up, and I will just put it down because I like the toilet seat to be down. And I might think, oh, he's forgotten to put that down, or I might not have any thinking about it at all. On another day, if my mood is feeling a bit low, if maybe I've got a lot on my mind, if my mind is all shook up like this, not feeling very clear, and with that comes feelings that are a little bit icky. I might be feeling unsettled or frustrated or angry or irritated, usually about something else. When I come across the toilet seat being up, I would have a completely different experience of it and a completely different reaction to it, a completely different perception of it. So this varies, as I'm sure you have experienced too, from having an angry thought, I wish you'd just put that toilet seat down, and maybe slamming the toilet seat down. Or if I'm in a really bad mood, it might end up with me saying to him, I do wish you'd put the toilet seat down. So again, that's a good indicator to me that the same event is happening in the outside world, but I'm having a completely different reaction to it. So if the toilet seat were able to make me feel anything, then I would have exactly the same reaction every time to the toilet seat being up. But I don't. I have a very different reaction to it. And what I have come to see about this is, you might ask the question, well, why is this useful information? Why is this helpful to me in my life? So using the toilet seat example, is that what I have seen about that, and most of the time now when the toilet seat is up, I have to say, I choose not to react. And I certainly choose not to react by saying something to my husband about it, because I know two things. I know that it's my preference for the toilet seat to be down rather. I know that my thought in the moment about the toilet seat being up is creating whatever feeling I'm having. And I know that because we need to have a thought in order to be able to act on it, my husband must have not had the thought, put the toilet seat down. So quite innocently, he's leaving that toilet seat up. He isn't doing it to piss me off. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't swear. Sorry, he isn't doing it to irritate me. He isn't doing it to deliberately forget. He must have not had the thought, I must put the toilet seat down. If he had have had the thought, I better put the toilet seat down, which sometimes he does, he would have put the toilet seat down. So this creates a lot more harmony in our relationship, because I'm less reactive, I'm less blaming, I'm less victim, I'm less angry about these little small things that can mount up. Now, that's not to say that you need to be a doormat about things. That's not to say that if it was something much more important, that I, in a clear state of mind, might have a conversation with my husband or my son about things that I have a preference for, and to see how they feel about it, to see where their thinking's at about it. But for those little irritations, not putting things in the dishwasher, leaving your shoes by the back door, those sorts of things, if we're not reacting to them, and I'm knowing that the experience is coming from within me as opposed to coming from my husband or the toilet seat, then it just creates a lot more harmony in our relationship. And I'm able to stay in a more peaceful place, and a more loving place, and a more open-hearted place with the people that I love and that I choose to be with. The other reason that it's important to see that things work from the inside out as opposed to the outside in is that quite naturally, when we know that any feeling we are having about something that's happening in our lives is coming from within us, and that as our perception of things changes, our feelings about that will change. And this is something that happens naturally for us. We don't have to force it. Just quite naturally, we'll have new, fresh thinking about something that will bring new, fresh feeling with it. It means that I certainly find I have to control the outside a lot less. So I spend much less time preoccupied in my mind and up in my head, trying to manage the world, trying to manage events that are going to happen, trying to manage other people's behaviours, trying to manage other people's moods, and trying to manage my own moods. Because I know that when I'm looking to try to change someone else's behaviour so that I feel better, I know that I'm in a misunderstanding about how life is working. And when we're in a misunderstanding, that generally means that we don't feel as good and that we have a lot on our minds. And when I remember that it's coming from within me, all of that misunderstanding falls away and I'm in a much more peaceful place. So ultimately what it means is that I can be less controlling about any experiences that come through me in life and to me in life. And it also means that I'm much less reactive. And it also means if we are believing that things are coming from the outside world and are affecting us in terms of how we feel, it also means that there's lots of different variables that I could be looking at and chasing to try to fix and change in order to feel good. Again, it might be someone else's behaviour, it might be how someone talks to me, it might be about things not being done late, or things being on time, or being ahead of things on my to-do list. There's lots of different variables that we're trying to scrabble around to get in place so that we feel peaceful and calm. But when we fall out of that misunderstanding that it's the outside world creating how we feel, and into the understanding that how I feel in the moment is coming from my thought in the moment or my perception in the moment, then there's only ever one place to look. Only ever one place to look. Rather than trying to look at all of the hundreds of little variables that are happening in the outside world, I only ever need to look, am I misunderstanding where my experience is coming from? Am I misunderstanding that my thought in the moment is creating this feeling? And I'm sure that you have also had the experience of, over time, quite naturally, your perception of things that have happened to you has changed. So I talked in a previous video about my having been through a divorce. And when that initially first was happening, I had lots of very difficult emotions around it, lots of frustration and anger and grief and sadness and feelings of loss. And quite naturally, over time, my perception of that has changed. Because I've had insights about it, I've been able to access my wisdom about why that happened. I've been able to see the good that has come from it, all of the things that I've learnt. And I'm now in a place where I feel completely loving towards my ex-husband, and I'm no longer blaming him for things having gone wrong. So if the outside world were able to influence how we feel, then that divorce would remain the same over time, but it doesn't, because it's all coming from within me. And as my internal perception of it has changed, my experience of it has changed. Yes, I can still remember the feelings that I had, but now the internal experience within me is one of great peace around it. So again, this really takes a lot off of our mind, it takes a lot off of our to-do list, takes a lot off of our plate, when we understand that we are like little creator beings walking around in the world with our internal perception creating our experience of the outside world. And it's also really good to know that it's also okay when we forget this, when we get caught up in, you did this, you did that, you made me feel like this. And I still get caught up in that sometimes, but what I find is I remember much more quickly, it's not working that way, it's working the other way around. So I think that's everything I wanted to say about this. Oh yeah, no, there's one more thing I wanted to say. So it's not to say that, what I'm not saying is that things aren't happening in the outside world, or that our mind is creating these events that are happening. Life is a contact sport, and there is a contact, there is an interaction between events happening in the world and our experience of them. But what there isn't is a direct correlation between the two, that this event always creates this feeling. there's a lot more movement, there's a lot more opportunity for things to change. There's a whole raft of different experiences that can happen from a single event in the outside world. And that's why, as I said before, it's really important that we are kind to ourselves when we do react in ways that we don't want to, because we're caught up in our thought in the moment, our perception in the moment about something. So I hope this has been useful. As I said last week, if there's any topic that you would like me to cover, then please just send me a private message or leave a post on my page in future videos. It's half term next week, so I shall be having a lovely week off with my beautiful son and my husband. But I will be back with another live video in 2 weeks. So I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day. And if you've watched this, thank you so much. Okay, bye for now.